Hello, welcome to Shad Life. Since I have a new bike and I can talk about this because I'm about to take my tools and do some tweaks to this, what are some of the things I adjust right away when I get a new bike? If you don't know how to work on a bike, then you want to try to have these things adjusted at the bike shop. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So let's go ahead and get to it, because even though this bike was professionally assembled, as far as the setup, like the angle of the handlebars, where the brake levers are at, the angle of the seat and all of that isn't ideal to how I like my bike setup. So I will show you the adjustments I'm going to do and why I do them. So we'll start with the shifters and the brake lever. This Shimano does have like a little catch or stopper right there, so this is as far in as you can get the brake lever, and then the shifters are inside of the brake lever. So what ends up happening is, if you look at the grip, you know, I like to have my hand here, and as I hold my hand on the grip, my fingers are hitting the levers, and when I reach to grab the brake lever, it actually pinches, if you can see that, my knuckle right there, and I don't like that. So I'll show you some of the adjustments I do. Okay, so now if you take a look, look at how much space there is in there, and notice how the shift levers barely intersect the grip. And then if you come around and look from the top, the brake lever is right where my index finger is. So I'm one finger braking, and what's best about this is it doesn't crush my knuckle anymore. See how I'm at the end of the lever? So before, my hand was way in here, so I don't have as much leverage on the lever, and see how it was hitting my knuckle. But now I'm at the very end of the lever where my finger is in that hook. That's where I want it, and so it doesn't crush my finger. So that's really important for me. And a lot of times bike mechanics, when they build bikes, Shimano prevents you from having the lever all the way in, but some levers you can put all the way against the grip, and then the whole lever is covering, and the shifters and all that. I hate that. Again, over here on the dropper post side, I move this in. So I measure the distance here, so I have them the same, and then I move the dropper lever in too, because it also was overhanging the grip quite a bit. And then I just reach, and when I need to actuate my dropper, it's right there. So this way, when I'm riding and I got a full grip, nothing is in the way. My hand isn't hitting the lever or anything, and when I need to actuate my dropper, I just reach my thumb out and it's right there, and I'm at the end, so I have the most leverage on it. So that stuff's really important to me, to have these controls in the right place. So the next thing I pay attention to, and these aren't terrible, is I want the bars back to line up with the angle of the fork. So I also don't like, if you look really close, you'll see how the bars wing up a little bit. So what I generally will do is I'll rotate them back till they're level or close to level, and that the rise angle matches the fork. That's another thing I like to do. It just gives me more direct pull in alignment with the front wheel when I do that. So let's make that adjustment. And when I do that adjustment, because I'm going to be twisting the bars, I'm very likely going to have to readjust the levers to be down. So I didn't crank them super tight for that reason, because once I adjust the bars, these are going to lift up, and I don't want them out like this. I want them at about a 45-degree angle. Okay, so after that adjustment, now notice how the handlebars aren't up at an angle like this. They're nice and flat, or pretty close, and they align with the alignment of the fork, the angle of the fork. That's how I like it. It's all personal preference. There are some people that like their bars twisted way forward and whatever, but this is how I like it. I like it right in line with the fork. Makes me feel like I have a more direct pull. Now, let's talk about the seat, because the seat definitely looks like it's too far nose down for my taste. So of course, when the seat's in the up position, I want it to be pretty much parallel to the ground, and right now it's just slightly nose down. I also generally want the seat center of the rails, but what I will do is I'll actually sit on the bike, put my foot on the pedal when it's in its up position. It's important to have it in its up position because this is when you're going to be seated and pedaling and at the right height setting for your height. And then I generally want my knee to go over my shoelaces when my foot is on the pedal. So I will slide the seat back and forth until I achieve that. And that's basically how I determine where my seat should go on the rails. Okay, so there you have it. I actually raised the seat a little bit, and by raising the seat, it's actually going to move you back further. So I ended up leaving the seat on the rails in the same spot because once I raised it a little bit, it aligned my knee up to where it needed to be when I had the ball on my foot perfectly placed on the pedal. That's more critical if you do a lot of seated pedaling, long distance riding. If you're mostly standing and shredding and not doing as long a distance riding, you don't have to worry so much about where your seat is in relationship to where your foot is on the pedal. But I do recommend it for people who do a lot of longer distance riding where they're seated a lot and pedaling. So that's pretty much it for adjustments. The only other thing I need to do is set up the fork how I like it, which is a bit more complex and will be its own video. But I wanted to show you how I set my cockpit up and stuff for riding and how I personally like it and why I like it that way. A lot of times people will tell you how they like things, but they won't explain why they like it that way. For me, it's important that I can hold the grip and not have the controls in the way, and that I can squeeze the lever and not have it crush my finger, right? So, and I can do one finger braking at the most efficient and most highest leverage point of the lever. Things like that. The handlebar position is a very personal preference thing. There is no wrong way to do it. I do recommend lining it up with the fork and get used to that and get comfortable with that, because for technical riding, I think it's important, like if you're doing manuals, popping up the front wheel and stuff, that you're pulling up directly in line with the front wheel, versus if your bars are cranked all forward, you're pulling more like towards the front of the wheel when you pull on the handlebar. So that's just why I do it, and so on and so forth. So there you have it. This bike is almost set up and ready for me to ride, even though it's still middle of February and I won't be riding it for a while. But I like to tinker with this stuff, make videos about it, and so on and so forth. I will go over the fork setup, because having that right amount of sag, which this little, if you ever wonder what these little bands are on forks, that's so you can measure sag. And there's negative and positive air pressure chambers on this particular fork. Not all forks have that. And then there's a rebound adjustment and a preload adjustment. And I don't know if this has high speed and low speed. I should check. I will, but that DVO fork on my yellow mullet build bike has high speed, low speed compression. So yeah, it can get really complicated when we start talking about fork adjustments. So I'll do a video on that and why you would set it up certain ways and what each one of the adjustments mean, what they do for you, and how they affect the ride quality of the fork. I appreciate your support for my channel. Awesome. Thinking spring right now. Gonna have lots of riding this year. Still got to build my DJ bike. So a lot of really good content coming. Please like and subscribe. Peace. Oh, and BMX, of course, because I love BMX.